I'm sure you've never considered adding a coloring book to your bedroom repertoire, but Love and Lust is the adult coloring book full of sensual imagery sure to get things heated up. I'm Jessica Van, and I help individuals and couples to enhance their sexual experiences through learning to prioritize their pleasure. I'm a licensed therapist, and I developed this coloring book as a way to eliminate the shame sometimes associated with sex and increase healthy conversations about true intimacy. Love and Lust is accompanied by the Essential Love and Lust Toolbox, which is online and offers therapeutic exercises sure to spice up things in and out of the bedroom. Head over to envisioncounselingllc.com and get your Love and Lust Toolkit today. From My Experience podcast listeners, get 25% off when you use promo code FME. Get your copy of Love and Lust today and add a little color to your sexy.
What is going on, everybody? This is your host, Rob, back with another episode of From My Experience podcast. Y'all already know how I start the show. I want to thank everyone that's a supporter, all of our listeners, whether it be on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, all those wonderful things. Thank everyone in the Facebook group for your continued colorful commentary and discussions. Thank everybody who's been supporting us on Instagram. Thank everyone who's been tuning in to the Instagram lives to look at my late night foolishness. I'll be bored, so y'all definitely help me out with that. Today, we have a special guest. I told y'all I'm going to have 50 interviews this year. 50, okay? So I have another special guest today. Another fellow Claflinite. Now, this was an important interview for me for a couple reasons, and she doesn't know this. She's about to hear this for the first time. It's not crazy. Don't make I wish y'all could see her face. You have this guest has a very what's the word I'm looking for? She has a very extensive journey into education, and what she's trying to do and is doing through education is very noble. And I know that this interview is important because, you know, when you scroll through social media, there's quite a bit of people that kind of bash education. They say, oh, college is this and not worth it and blah, blah, blah. And that always strikes a nerve with me because I went to college and I graduated, and the connections that I've made and the experiences I have are priceless to me. You know, I've impacted lives, and I wouldn't have been able to do that without my formal education. So this is also someone who I had to hunt down. She was on the list. She's off the list now. I got about 10 more people left. But I will say this. While we were in school together, she always carried herself with class, with style, with grace. Her presence was always felt, and she had the most radiant smile I ever saw. All right, enough of that. No, I'm not flirting. Y'all shut up. I know what y'all thinking. So, she is a professor at the University of Southern Indiana. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Xavia Harrington.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for making time for us. How have you been?
It's only been like 2 or 3 years in the making.
Yeah.
We've only talked about this for like almost 3, maybe 4 years now. It's 2020.
It was my fault because my follow-up game is real. Well, it was real trash, but now
Okay. It's okay. It's a big deal now, so I'm happy to be here. I'm happy that I have the free time. Happy that I was able to pin it into my schedule, and happy that you all could have me. So thank you for having me.
No problem. We definitely appreciate your time. So we're going to get right into this.
Uh-oh.
Wait a minute. I know I saw something. Did you say you're first generation?
Yeah, I'm a first
Okay.
generation student.
Okay, let's talk about that. You're the second person I've had on here that's been a first generation student, and y'all stories are extremely interesting to me because y'all have pioneered something for your entire family. So,
Right.
talk about what that was like for you.
Okay. So yeah, as your gracious host has already said, I'm Xavia Harrington. I'm an Orangeburg native. Um, born and raised, I like to say, in Orangeburg, South Carolina. And if you know anything about the 803 and um, that part of the Midlands and Orangeburg in general, you know how high poverty is in that area, but you also know how important quality education is if you're from that area. So if you're a South Carolina native, I'm sure you remember, um, the Bible Belt and all of those school districts suing the state of South Carolina for educational access, right? And
Hmm.
just educational equality, right? Why can't a school in Orangeburg have the same standards and the same teaching expectations as a school in, Charleston, as a school in, Richland or Lexington? So for me, I don't think I knew what first gen was in middle school. I became aware of my first generation status, I would say, around high school. But for me, my dad always worked. I came from a two-parent household. My
Hmm.
mother always worked. But the little things that they would say to me made it evident to me that I was first gen. So my father saying to me, I want you to get a good education. I want you to go to school because I don't want you to have to get up, 5 o'clock in the morning to make your coffee, prepare to go to work.
Right.
I want you to have a different type of work-life balance. And I don't think my parents knew what work-life balance was in the 90s, but those were the things that my dad would say to me. I want you to focus on your education. That's the only thing that's going to set you apart from the lifestyle that I had to live. And again, these are people who grew up in South Carolina during, brutal times of segregation and then had to endure integration. And I
Mm.
say endure integration because in South Carolina, integration was just as hard on the black students as it was on the white students who didn't want it. So, they endured integration. And then for my dad, who had never been to college, who only had his high school education, to say to me almost every day, your job is to be a student. Your job is to go, further than I went. To me, it was important. Um, I just remember telling my parents at a young age, like, I want to make you proud. I don't want to ever do anything that makes you question, why did we have you? Like, you are this, like, all those nights spent talking to you and reading books to you, you can't even, write a sentence. Like, we are just so embarrassed to be your parents. So I would always say to them, I just want you to be proud of me. And once I learned that I was a first generation student, I mean, my goals were always to go to college.
Mhm.
I grew up watching different worlds, so I knew sort of
Hey.
inherently that I was going to go to an HBCU. Um, and it just so happened that whole journey of being a first generation student, I don't think I ever realized how important mentors were.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think I ever realized how important having strong teachers who understood me, being a dark skinned black girl from the country, needing to, ask you a question or two more than my other colleagues.
Right.
Um, all of those things became apparent once I got in high school because I went from, going to um, a school like Felton Laboratory that was predominantly black, and we had professors and
Right. Okay.
we had professors teaching us. We had teachers who had won, national awards teaching us K through 8.
Wow.
To then leave Felton laboratory school and then have to go to a public high school where the demographic was completely different, and I was one of, two black kids in an honors class.
Ooh.
That was hard. So that's why I always tell people I learned I was first gen in high school because my teachers who were college professors and community college instructors, they never, talk to us in those terms like, oh yeah, you're black, so you're going to have to struggle. Oh yeah, you're first gen, so you're going to have to struggle. It was, my expectations are high for you and I know you can meet these expectations. So we never even considered it, right?
Mhm.
Everyone's black, everyone's thriving. We had 3 or 4 students who weren't black, right? So I'm thinking white, Asian American, etc. But to then be put in a public school setting in a rural part of Orangeburg where I'm, sometimes one of 2 or one of 3 black students in an AP or an honors classroom,
Mm.
that was completely different for me. So that's when I realized I have to ask for help. I have to have mentors because I'm now in situations that my parents can't help me with. As
Okay.
soon as I
Yeah.
transitioned into high school, my parents' abilities to help me just sort of stopped.
Yeah.
So what do I do? Do I fight and recreate the wheel and become frustrated with the educational system, or do I learn what it means to be first gen and find allies and people who are willing to help me through? And that's really how I made it. That's how I made it to Claflin. That's how I made it through Claflin. That's how I made it into my master's program. And that's literally how I'm making it through this PhD program.
So wow, you you took first gen to the maximum. The maximum. I'm gonna get all the schooling. She said she's gonna get it all. Wow. So based off of what you just said, first of all, that's an amazing story. Are you writing a book?
People ask me that all the time. I don't have the brain cells for that right now, but it's something I would love to do down the line. I just finishing this dissertation takes so much work. There
Okay.
are nights where I am up on the couch 1, 2, 3 in the morning. People have been asleep 6 hours by then. I'm up with
Oh.
another cup of coffee trying to bang out this dissertation. And, if I were only doing it for myself, I would have given up a long time ago.
Mm,
But I have to do it for, the kids who may not be in Orangeburg right now, but who grew up the way I grew up,
yeah.
who are like, yeah, I want to be a professor one day too. Yeah, I want to be an educator one day too. It's like, well, I can't give up because then you won't see the path. I can only show you the path if I take it first. So I'm trying. Like crawling
No,
my
you
way
like
through.
speeding. Like when I was just reading like everything you sent me, on your job forms, I'm just like, oh. Like I would see
No,
stuff
not
here and
at all.
there on Facebook, but I was like, oh. See, I've never had the capacity for just being in school. I never just academics just wasn't my thing. I was good at it, I did okay. I was a AB student. C sometimes when I wasn't applying myself. I have regrets, but I really applaud people like you who continue to push and really achieve those high academic standards because it just takes another level of maturity, dedication, and focus. Because it's not easy. It's not like you just wake up and you get A's. Like you're sacrificing a lot of the fun and entertainment that goes into being a college student and some of that social life too. Because I realized that after I graduated and I would share stories with people and they was like, no, I was probably doing homework. No, I was like, dang. No wonder you make six figures.
And see, that's a part of it. Once you realize, like, I have this passion for helping students, right? I want to make sure that I get into these doors and into these rooms and sit at these tables so that the people who will never make it into these buildings have a voice. And I don't want to sound like a martyr. I'm not sacrificing my young adulthood so
Hmm.
that these other little black kids and brown kids, Asian kids, biracial kids can have a voice. But in some ways it's true, right? You
Yeah.
sacrifice your free time, you sacrifice going out, you sacrifice homecomings
Yeah.
to do what's necessary because after this phase of life is done, I will be able to benefit others, right? Because again, if it was truly for me, I would have given up after Claflin. Like I don't I don't need any more. I learned a lot during my time at Claflin, but the educational system is set up in such a way that I can't really advocate for poor kids, for kids of color, for kids with diverse abilities, with a bachelor's degree in the ways that I can advocate with the PhD. So that's why I'm doing it.
So talk about your bachelor's. Why did you choose the field that you chose? English education. I don't know what TESOL
Yeah.
is. Sorry.
Yeah. So I think I realized around middle school that I was a really good writer, which is why when people like you and other people comment, oh, are you writing a book? I just laugh because I've heard it so long,
Yeah.
that one day I probably will. But even on like my Facebook posts, people comment, when are you writing a book? I'm like, it's just a few paragraphs I threw together. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I think I realized in middle school that I was a good writer because I would tutor my classmates. Like I would help them on
Oh
their
wow.
essays, like not editing, so to speak, because I don't think I knew all the basics then, but I knew what a strong sentence was and what it was not. So I realized then I wanted to be an English professor. And in high school, one of my closest mentors, uh, Dr. Smith, um, an elderly white woman with short gray hair said to me my freshman year of high school, you know, Xavier, you're a great writer, and you should think about being that English professor. I know you've been going back and forth with whether you want to be an English teacher or an English professor. She's like, you could definitely do it, and that's sort of the push I needed. I think I was allowing society to tell me, you know, little black girls from Orangeburg don't go on to become professors.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I had heard that so many times that I'd stopped telling people that's what I wanted to do. So to hear that from someone I looked up to, I felt that was like the motivation I needed. So I decided, okay, if I'm going to be the English professor, I have to learn grammar. I have to learn sentence structure. I have to, because again, I'm going to be put in spaces in classrooms where students are going to question my ability. They're
Yeah.
going to question my experience. They're going to question if I know what I'm talking about. So from high school on, I took all the English classes. I sat in the front. I asked all the questions. I wanted all the worksheets. You know, I wanted to push myself. And then, of course, when it came time to apply for college, I, you know, designated my major and minor. Claflin had it so that I could, you know, sort of do both at the same time. I was like, this is perfect. And I went in head first, right? English education is what I want to do. I want to teach kids how to become better writers. And I think what I realized my freshman year at Claflin, which is where the TESOL part comes in, is that we were then in 2006 using English and how kids assimilate into writing, into formal academic language to keep kids from doing well in school. It was like a barrier. So remember we were talking about like African American vernacular and
Yep.
ebonics,
Yep.
right? And teachers were using that to keep kids from advancing to the next grade level. And I was like, this is ridiculous to me. Everybody code switches.
Yes.
Right. I'm from Orangeburg. The way that I talk to my friends, hey Bo, what's up, man? You know, that's how we talk. And
Right.
we've been talking that way since birth. I don't then go into my classroom with my professors and say, yeah, nah, Bo, that ain't gonna work for me. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not, to me, that was obvious. So when I set out, I was like, okay, I'm going to be the best English professor I can be. And in order to be a great English professor, I have to learn. So I took the classes. I had some professors who were hard on me, who
Really?
pushed me. Yes, who, you know, said, you know, if you really want to be an English professor, especially my English professors, if you want to be this, you're going to have to work hard. So they would push me and I would have to go to their office and they would quiz me. I mean,
Oh,
I asked
snap.
for it.
Okay.
Yeah, I asked for it. So I learned a lot, you know, and it made me strong so that by sophomore year, I said, you know what, I don't want to just teach English to the poor kids and the kids of color who really need to learn English to be able to advance. I want to also teach it to the kids who are immigrants whose first language isn't English, right? How do I teach English to someone who does not speak English? And it was Dr. Matali Wong, uh, who said to me, and she was an English professor at the time, she said, Xavier, if you can teach English to someone whose native tongue is not English, then you know you good.
Right. That. Yeah.
So that's what I did. So I started working in the writing center at Claflin. Um, the education department at Claflin had this beautiful partnership with the school district where I was able to go into these kids' homes with their parents, right? These kids don't speak English.
Right.
And I'm in their homes during the summer and during the school year teaching them English. And it was a great learning experience. Like that's why I tell people, you know, people who have never had an HBCU experience, specifically a Claflin experience, I can't explain to you what Claflin gave me that I know other schools couldn't have been able to give me, but I can explain to you through where I am today, right? And what I know
Yes.
today. And I know the things that I know today because of that Claflin experience and how invested those professors were in me. My English professors didn't have to, you know, set up meetings with me in their office to make sure I knew what a modifier was. They didn't have to set up
Right.
meetings to make sure I understood the importance of prepositions. They didn't have to set up meetings to make sure I knew how to teach students sentence structures, but they did because I shared with them I wanted to be an English professor. And they knew as a dark-skinned Black woman, they're going to push you and they're going to want to know how much you know. So I'm going to quiz you and you're going to get good at this. And I really appreciated it. I really did.
You just said something there. That Claflin experience is just, it's another level, man. Like y'all don't understand. Panther pride is real. Like this is, you talk to any Claflinite and you'll get the same thing. Like it was like a second home. Like the professors, you respected them, but they would slap you upside the head sometimes and be like, not literally, but people like to sue. I'm joking, y'all. But they would really pull you to the side and give you a talking to. Like they cared. they cared. You know, they really wanted to see you do well. If you're missing class, if you're partying too late, you're showing up late, you look tired, like they had a vested interest in you, and they would give you a great talking to. I remember some of those meetings that I've had, some of those talking tos I got, because I would get off track and not do what I'm supposed to do. And that really helped me. It helped me become a better mentor to some of, my friends and some of my young fraternity brothers and stuff like that when I have conversations with them, because I can see that in them, like how I was, and then, taking that experience and putting that on them. But this ain't about me. So you did all of this hard work, amazing work at Claflin. And then what happened after graduation?
Yeah, it's a crazy story. So we were enjoying junior year. Taking the GRE, took the praxis, passed, got my certification. I'm ready.
That P word.
Ready to go. And my mom suffered a stroke.
Oh.
And my dad was devastated. Like, he was devastated. He didn't know whether he was coming or going. He was like, do I work extra shifts now to take care of the household bills? Like, what do I do to ensure that when my wife gets better, because he's a man of great faith, I know she's going to get better, but what do I do to ensure that when my wife gets better, she's able to come back to our home and we don't have more debt, right? So there were a few months there, junior year, right before senior year, where I was like, I'm going to take a year off. I'm going to work. I'm going to help my dad pay for my mom's therapy that she was going to need. She was going to need extensive therapy. She couldn't speak or walk or anything. And there were several weeks there where I was really debating, like, I'm going to take a year or a year and a half away. And again, and not to toot, Claflin's horn, but it was Mrs. Alice Carson Tisdale. It was my professors. It was my advisor who reached out to me and said, Xavia, you weren't in class this week. What's going on? This isn't like you. You sit in the front. You're, studious. You're trying your best to take advantage of the time you have here at Claflin. Why aren't you showing up? And it wasn't until I sat down with Mrs. Tisdale and explained to her, that my mother is at MUSC right now. She's been in a coma for a few weeks, and we don't know what's going on. My dad is really despondent. He's really not talking. I know it's hurting him because he's used to having his wife. What do I do? It was then that she said to me, you're not going to drop out of school. Like, you're going to stay in school and we're going to figure this out. And she said to me, you're driving back and forth to Charleston after class. You're getting back late in the morning. She's like, Xavia, that's not safe. You're getting on the road late. You're staying with your mom. Because I would sleep at my mom's bedside and my homework and all of that. And again, she's in a coma, so she doesn't know I'm there. But the nurses would bring me, blankets. They would bring me water, whatever I need. I would do my homework at her bedside, fall asleep. They would never kick me out, thank God. I would wake up the next morning, give her a kiss goodbye. Again, she doesn't recollect any of this. I would fold up the blanket. I would thank the nurses. I would drive back to Claflin, shower, dress in the dorm, and head back out, right? Like,
Wow.
It was, I did that for several weeks. My mother was in a coma for almost 3 months. So it was Mrs. Tisdale saying to me, whatever we have to do so that you're not missing that 8, 9, and 10 o'clock class because you're literally driving back from Charleston, we will do. She said, but I don't want you to drop out of school. And that's not even an option for you. And again, I was a junior, right? I had an academic record. It wasn't that I was a bad student or, I didn't care about my education. It was literally that life happened. And when you're a first generation student, when life happens like that and you're on a campus, a beautiful campus in a beautiful dorm, you got your own bathroom, you're eating all this good food in the caf, you feel bad for choosing your education over your family when they need you.
Yep.
And in that moment, my mom was sick. My dad was depressed. My dad was overworking himself, trying to make ends meet. And here I am on Claflin's campus, hanging out with my line sisters,
Yeah.
We're eating in the caf 3 times a day. We're chilling on the yard. We're laughing and mucking it up. And my mom's sick. So it's that weird pull that first gen students have when anything happens back at home and I'm living this very privileged life in college. So for me, I had that struggle for about 3 months, and it was the first lady of Claflin who said to me, that's not an option for you. We're going to find some way to make that 8, 9, and 10 o'clock class that I normally had no issues going to work out. So that summer, my mother got better, thank God,
Thank God.
and able to work and help my dad out and help make ends meet and all of that. And it just worked out where that summer gave me the time that I needed. Because I had already taken my GRE and I had already taken the praxis, it didn't affect me much there. And then senior year was just it was just a blessed year for me. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed hanging out with my friends. I enjoyed being back on that campus again because it was my mother was good, my dad was good, life was good. So I applied for grad school. I really wanted to go to Auburn because Auburn was offering a master's and a PhD together in composition and rhetoric.
Oh.
So all of my English professors told me at Claflin, if you want to really get down to the nuts and bolts of writing, and you want to be the person to help poor kids and students of color really learn academic writing, you need to be a compositionist. You need to learn rhetoric. You need to learn how sentences are formed. You need to learn how to form sentences so that people know when you're mad and people when you're happy. And I'm like, wow, this is so interesting, right? I think I had taken like one rhetoric class at Claflin, which is customary for college. But when you want to be a rhetorician and really have a way with words, that rhetoric and composition degree is the only way to go. And at the time, Auburn was one of the only schools in the South that offered a master's and a PhD in it.
Sheesh.
Now, again, I had never been to Auburn. I had only ever been an Auburn fan, SEC football, like
Right.
everybody else in South Carolina. Everyone down South watches football. So I'd always been an Auburn fan, but I had never been to Auburn or walked on those plains to know what that was like. So I applied. I got a letter saying, congratulations, Xavia, you've been accepted on a full academic scholarship. And all I could do was praise God. That's all I remember. I remember getting on my knees. I remember crying. I remember thanking God and praising God because, again, and I can't stress this enough, coming from Orangeburg, South Carolina, where I come from, knowing the level of poverty, knowing the way that many people look at us because we are from Orangeburg, South Carolina. This isn't Charleston. This isn't Columbia. This isn't, this ain't West Ashley. This is Orangeburg. So for me to get a full academic ride at that school, knowing their academic expectations, I was floored. So before, I could really get the letter open good, I was like, I'm going to Auburn. So I had already planned out. I don't have to work tomorrow. I'm driving down to Alabama. I'm gonna find me an apartment. I just wanted to see it. I had never been. So it was a Friday. I had already planned it. And I drove down to Alabama and checked it out. This is before Airbnb, stayed at a little crummy hotel. I told like 3 of my LSs I was going because I didn't want them to be scared.
Right.
They were going to be like, girl, Alabama? You going by yourself?
That's a long drive. I made that trip with my line brothers.
By yourself, right, on a Friday. Well, how long you going to be gone, But I told 3 of them because I wanted them to know if something happened. I didn't tell my parents. I just wanted to go and see. Like, I want to see, if this is where I'm going to spend the next, 2 to 4 years of my life. I want to see what this place is like. And I went down there and I fell in love with it. I signed up for a campus tour. I stayed at a little crummy hotel again. I'm a college senior. I don't have no money like that. Stayed at a little crummy hotel. Thank God I was safe. Next morning, got up, ate my little continental breakfast, and came back to Claflin to enjoy graduation and the finality of senior year. But I literally got to Auburn on all those prayers of my mom, my grandma, and my dad. I know that to be a fact because if it wasn't for Mrs. Tisdale, I wouldn't have even graduated from Claflin, let alone made it to Auburn.
I gotta catch my breath. Hold up.
It's just my life. It's just every day. It's just my life. Don't be overwhelmed.
I am because I have similar experience. Mrs. Tisdale, I like to say, saved my life. My freshman year, we just at White Oak. Did you go to White Oak? You went to White Oak.
Yes.
Yeah. When her and Mr. Tisdale, President Tisdale, just had a conversation with me because they saw I was down, kid from Philadelphia. I had to leave everything, no friends. My family was right there in Charleston, but I'm like, I'm starting my life over again.
And you never let us forget that you were from Philly. Never. You never allowed us to forget that this is very weird for me.
Yeah, I was a different person. But it just goes back to what I said earlier about that love and about them caring. Like, I'll never forget what she said to me after our conversation. She said, "You'll be okay. You're home now." And when I went through what I went through, I did take time off from school, but I came back because I was so close to finishing, and I knew I was gonna have the support that I needed. But wow, okay. So you're definitely writing a book. So wow, I'm sorry. I'm really absorbing everything you just said. That's a lot, and you're just
It is a lot.
You're taking all this stuff on, and I couldn't imagine having those feelings and that pressure of exactly what you just said. Like you're basically living in the lap of luxury. Like everything is good at school,
Literally,
but everything at home isn't good, and you're being torn. I don't know if y'all listeners have ever been torn like that, where you feel like this is my destiny over here, but this is like my foundation over here, which I gotta choose. Like, and sometimes you don't have to choose. Sometimes things end up working out. Thank God they worked out for you.
Yeah,
wow,
imagine making that decision at 19. You know, it's heavy. It's heavy.
That's the other thing. Yeah, you're super young.
Oh yeah, I think I was 19 because I came to Claflin at 17. So
Wow.
I was 19, about to be 20. It was a lot. It was a lot to take in, but grace of God. It was one of those grace of God moments, one of those destiny moments, as you just said. I feel like it worked out. She stepped in when she was supposed to, because there were times I would drive down the interstate crying, trying to make it back to Claflin because I'm torn. I have this education. I have to go to class. And I'm not going to make it to this 8 o'clock. I'm not going to make it to this 9 o'clock. I'm not going to make it to this 10 o'clock because now that I'm here, I don't want to leave my mom.
Right.
Right. And then I'm driving down the interstate crying. Plenty of times I could have been in an accident. To this day, there's some trips down that road. I can't even tell you how I got from Orangeburg to Charleston to MUSC to see my mom. By the grace, I made it there safely. I stayed the night. Nurses, by the grace, never kicked me out because I wouldn't have had any place to go in the area, right, to come back and see my mom in the morning. By the grace, they would bring me a blanket and a little fruit cup that they snuck out the cab. By the grace, they would let me do my homework beside my mom. By the grace, I would get up and fold my blanket and sneak out the side door. By the grace, I never got kicked out. 3 months of that.
Why you had to sneak out the side door? You could
because I wasn't supposed to be there. Remember, you have visitation hours, so visitors are supposed to leave at a certain time. But I think the nurses realized that she's driving up from Orangeburg to be with her mom. We can't kick her out. So those are things I don't share to make people feel sorry for me. Right. I share to make people believe in what's for you is for you.
Yes.
And if you fight for it, all the things that are supposed to come to you will come to you in due time.
Ooh, I like that. So you made a random trip to Auburn. You loved it, obviously.
Loved it. Never told anybody I was going. Like 3 of my line sisters knew, and it was a super, super secret. I swore them to secrecy.
All right. So what was this educational journey like once you got to Auburn?
Oh my gosh. So coming from Claflin, where everyone knows everyone, and even the international students, right, come to Claflin and make it their home and find kinship and family. Auburn was so big that for the first few months, if I'm being honest, I just felt like a fish out of water. Like I knew academically I could hang. I knew socially, I can have the conversations. I can get to know anybody, right? But it was something weird about being in that space where nobody cared. Nobody cared about that. It was about, you're a graduate student now. There are no social activities for you. There are no activities for you to get to know people. There are no student support services for you. There are no advisors. There are no, right? So I went back to being a first-gen student again. So now I'm a first-gen student. There are no advisors. There is no place for me to go and get advice.
Right. Dang.
I don't have a master's degree. My parents don't have a who's talking to whom? So I'm going around campus like, are there resources for graduate students? Like how do I know what next steps to take?
Right. Oof.
And there was nothing, right? You have the Alumni Association, but guess what? That's for alumni. You're a student. Black Student Union is there, but it's predominantly run by undergraduates who have undergraduate issues. You're a grad student. You're supposed to be self-reliant. You're supposed to be good. But still, I'm a first-generation student, and I needed that mentorship. I needed that push. to show me what to do. What are the expectations now in this next level? And I had no clue. So I went back to Old Faithful, which were books, and trying to find some allies. Okay, well, who can be my allies? Who can be my mentors? Thank God I had a great cohort. My classmates at Auburn were great. They would invite me over for dinner. We would hang out outside of class. They actually took the time to get to know me. That made a huge difference. But if I'm being honest, those first few weeks were really hard for me. And, you know, I'm in an apartment all by myself. I'm in a new state. I don't know any of these people. These professors don't know me. They don't have to go out of their way to help me. And I'm, you know, just signed up for a master's PhD program, which could take anywhere from 2 to 4 years. So
They're gonna be here for a while.
Gonna be here for a while, so you better get to liking it. So I made some great friends. Some other women of color in the area just really loved on me and started treating me more like family than a friend. And they would invite me to their family functions and cookouts. And that is when I began to sort of get my stride. Like, okay, I can create that family atmosphere that I love from Claflin in this new foreign land. I can create it. It ain't gonna be the same, but I can create that sense of family and that sense of kinship that I was lacking. Because again, I'm living by myself. I don't know these people, right? There is no way for me to become familiar, really. I learned a lot, and I went back to what I know, sitting in the front of the class, asking the hard questions. You know, again, I was the only Black student, or one of 2 Black students in a classroom. So I had to go back to high school and remember what worked then. I would, you know, go to professors' office hours. I was asking all the hard questions. Whenever conversations of race or ethnicity came up, I, you know, was always the advocate that was on the side of the devil. What about this? What about that? I was very cautious not to be a token, you know, and not to, you know, be a yes woman and just smile and nod when people said racist or prejudiced or bigoted stuff, to make people stand behind the things that they said. And it wasn't argumentative. It was more so, you know, if you're going to be somebody's professor, you know, I want to make sure you know what you just said. And I want to make sure you can make sense of what you just said. I read lots, and I, you know, began going to my chair at the time. He was the chair of the English department, Dr. Villanueva. And I would just sign up for weekly office hours. And I, you know, at the time, I didn't think it was bothering him. I thought of it more so as, I need a mentor. I need somebody to tell me what these academic expectations are, because no one in my family has been, no one in my immediate family has been in a master's program, a master's PhD program. So I need someone who can hold my feet to the fire and say, no, ma'am, that's not how you do that.
Right. Extra accountability.
Right. And I was used to that at Claflin. And again, I didn't have that. So I would set up weekly office hours, and I would just ask some questions. And, you know, here are the things I'm thinking about. And does this make sense? And here's what we're reading in so-and-so's class. And here's what I took from that reading. And do you have any other readings I should be reading? You know?
Yeah.
And he pushed me. He gave me stacks of articles, and he would email me links, but he would also talk to me like a scholar. He didn't talk to me like, oh, you're just somebody who is interested in it, but you're never going to accomplish it. It was, I see you making strides for others in the educational field, so I'm really going to give you access to all these things. I'm going to give you access to these readings. I'm going to show you about these theories. I'm going to show you all the things that I know. And that man, you know, if I would add up all the time that he spent talking to me in his office, years. So, you know, I got ready to graduate, and he was one of the first people who was, you know, ecstatic to write me a letter of recommendation for my first, you know, real teaching job. Of course, I taught at Auburn, but he was one of the first people who was like, I'll write it for you. You're good. You're ready. I'll write it. And he has been writing letters of recommendation on my behalf ever since.
Yo, first of all, that is awesome, excellent, wonderful. I want to highlight something about your journey that you just said, that a lot of people, including myself, I used to have an issue with this, but I don't anymore. And it's something you did, and I wish I would have done a long time ago. Yo, you can't be afraid to seek out what you need. It's not going to fall out of the sky. It's people not always just going to walk up to you and help you. Like, you got to go talk to people. You have to be uncomfortable. You're going to have to sacrifice some time, some effort, and energy to show someone, hey, I'm here. I need you. What's up? What can you give me a little bit of? Okay. And then once someone sees that you're truly invested, they will pour into you. Most people who are accomplished, they want a mentee or someone to pass all of that information along, if not their kids, someone to pass that information along. Because I have a mentor, my real estate mentor did that with me. I told him, I was like, I want to know everything there is to know about real estate. Boy, why did I say that? And he took me under his wing and he was like, all right, let's go. And every time I tried to get slack or lazy, well, aren't you the one that said you wanted to know everything? Dang, got to put down the Xbox controller, get up, go,
That's right.
riding around the low country. So, and that's especially tough for you because you are literally navigating uncharted territory. You have no one you can pick up and call and talk to about this. Like, you are literally in the dark with a flashlight with 10% battery. So
in a new land, a place you've never been. You don't have anybody who's ever gone to that school, so you can't say, hey, do you know somebody in financial aid? Hey, do you know somebody in the library? Hey, do you know somebody in the writing center? When you have that legacy status, there's a lot of privilege that comes along with being a legacy.
Yes.
I can call auntie, uncle, mom, dad and say, hey, don't you know so-and-so who works in the library? You think you can finagle these $200 library fines I got? But when you are the first, you calling yourself. You can pick up the phone and look at yourself and put the phone back down, and you're gonna try to figure it out. But yeah, you're right. You can't be afraid to ask because in those situations, again, the first few weeks of being in Auburn, completely different culture in Alabama, at the height of Auburn football championship history, those people weren't thinking about me.
Right.
It's Auburn. You're here. You made it. You know how to navigate. And it's like, oh, but little do you know, I'm first gen. So I know how to, read these books and write these essays and have intelligent conversations. But navigating this academic environment is different. It's different when you're the first.
Oof. So before I get to where you are today in your educational journey.
Okay.
Let's talk about, I want to talk about your professional experience. So you said you taught. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what level did you teach at and what was that like for you?
Yeah, so before leaving Orangeburg, I was able to teach high school English. I enjoyed that. It was fun, man. It was fun. I was doing things like making Shakespeare cool. So how do you teach Othello, to 11th grade kids at Orangeburg Wilkinson? Like, those were the things that were interesting to me. And then after my time teaching in Orangeburg, of course, taught at Auburn as a part of my degree. I was supposed to be there for the master's through the PhD, and I just decided I'm going to get this master's and I'm going to leave. Mm-hmm. And my teaching experiences there were great. But again, I had several students who loved me, who nominated me for teaching awards. And then, as my professors told me, you're going to come across that student who's going to think, I know more than you, little black girl. And that's exactly what happened. I came across those students who would make derogatory statements in class.
What?
Question my intelligence. If I were to say something or answer a student's question, they would try to follow up and answer it in a different way, as though they were the professor and they knew more. I had students who would say things to me like, well, you asked for, a 5-page argumentative paper. And I think that's too much. I think that's outside of the expectations of the course. At which point I would sit them down and say, would you ever question a white male professor on how many pages he asked you to write for an argumentative writing class? And for me, those were all opportunities for me to really develop that muscle. Right. Yeah. To develop the strength to say, you're not going to check me on what I know. What I know is what I know. I've been built for this. My professors at Claflin prepared me for this. I know you thought you were going to come in here today and make the little black girl, the black professor cry. That's not me. So it was always a beautiful experience and a wonderful time, but there was always this one, right? There's always this one who wants to put you in your place. Right. Yeah, I'm stronger than you. I'm apt. Right. Yeah. I'm more American than you. I'm smarter than you. And it's like, I'm just the professor. I'm just here to teach you. I'm not here to have political debates with you. I'm not here to debate why I believe in equality for all people, despite race or sexual orientation or nationality. I'm not here to debate that with you, sir, madam. What I am here to do is to teach you this good English so that you can be able to write and articulate yourself and move about the country, right? This isn't a place for us to have political debates. So once I had those experiences, I would often laugh because those were the things my professors at Claflin told me I would experience. But it prepared me to be able to hold my weight and to stand on my own in a classroom where there are no other allies to back me up. It's just me and a class of 25 kids. How do you navigate the biases that come along with now you being Black, you being a dark-skinned Black woman, you being a woman, you being a Christian, you being from a different state, you being a HBCU grad, because there were some of those students, like, where'd you go to school?
Yeah.
And then you being considered inferior to a kid who literally just graduated from high school 2 months ago, and I'm sitting here a few weeks away from having a master's degree. Like, where in your mind do you think I'm not qualified to be your professor? So tons of biases, in that
Wow.
experience. But I learned a lot, and it made me love Auburn because, anytime I would report, and I was able to hold my own. I never had to really ask, public safety or somebody to get me out of a situation with the student. But anytime I would report disrespectful students or prejudice or anything like that, my chair had my back. My chair knew my goal was to teach my students. He knew my goal was never to be rude to students or biased to students. So when I would report it to him, it was no question. Okay, well, we're going to keep a lookout for that student. We're going to make sure that student doesn't continue to harass you in the classroom. We're going to let that student know, hey, if you want to take another class with another professor, you can, but we think you could learn a lot from that Black professor. So it's interesting. I learned a whole lot.
Wow, you have a ton of patience.
Yes, I do.
You do. I could imagine. Because me teaching on the elementary level, I've gotten it from them. I'm like,
Yep.
bro, you was. Never mind, I can't even say what I want to say. Like,
Yeah, like, we're not arguing.
Yeah.
We're not having a conversation. Imagine me looking at a student who's 18. I am a few weeks away from having a master's degree. Okay, you're 18. You just graduated from high school, public high school in Alabama, and you're trying to have an ideological, intelligent debate with me in the middle of English class. Like, this is not, sir. This is not it. This is not what we're doing today.
That is not what they want. Okay,
Not
so
today.
wow, that is some experience. You definitely need to write a book. I'm gonna keep saying it. So now let's talk about you in this education. So let's talk about where you are now today.
Okay. Yeah, so after I moved to Indiana, I decided to shift focus from English education, which again were my bachelor's and really my master's, which is why I decided not to get the PhD in English, rhetoric, and composition from Auburn, to just get the master's and leave, because all of my conversations with my chair at Auburn were about social justice and issues of diversity in education, and how are we treating the poor kids in the classroom? How are we treating the students of color in the classroom? How are we treating the students with diverse abilities in the classroom? Are we giving them the same opportunities to be successful as the other students, right? And all of my conversations were about that. And all of my research papers were about, how do I help poor kids write better? How do I help Black students get over the Ebonics, the AAVE hump? Because again, back then that was a huge debate. Can Black students assimilate into the formal writing structures? How do I help, students who are not originally from this country really learn how to utilize English to, benefit themselves and benefit their families, right? So all of my conversations were about that, and I just came to this realization that I'm not supposed to be getting a PhD in English. I'm not supposed to be getting a PhD in English education. I'm supposed to be getting a PhD in social justice, change, issues of diversity in educational settings. I'm supposed to be finding out ways to make education more equitable for students. I don't care about the institutional success. I don't care about how much money these schools are making off of these kids' backs. I care about the kids being able to get into the schools, matriculate successfully, and then, of course, graduate. So I sought out, what are the schools that offer social justice and issues of diversity in education? There were 2 in my immediate area. I applied to Bellarmine University, which is a small Catholic-leaning institution in Louisville, Kentucky. And I realized really quickly that was going to be a 2-hour drive.
Woo.
And I said, I've been through worse. So I applied. I had to write an essay to get in. You had to include writing statements and how appropriate is it for the former English education major that you want to see my writing. I got tons of essays.
Tons.
What you want? You want A? You want B? So I just, went through my Rolodex and found some of my best writing and attached that to my application. I had to again write about why I was pursuing a PhD in issues of diversity in education, and I submitted her. And of course, I submitted it with like bated breath, like, okay, I wonder if I'm gonna get in. I wonder if this is where it ends. I
Mm-hmm.
wonder if this is because again, as a first gen student, you still have that imposter syndrome, like, have I just skated through? And it's sad to say all of
Oh,
the
you felt like
hurdles,
that?
of course, even all of the hurdles that I had to jump to get to that point, I still, in submitting that application,
Wow.
thought, like most first gens do, is this where it stops? Are they going to see me as capable? Are they going to see me as worthy of this opportunity for this education? Because
Really?
again, you're the gatekeeper. You can
Yeah.
say no, and that's it for me. Now I have to go somewhere else and see if they'll say yes. And if they say no, then you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I was nervous. So I applied, and of course you had to wait. Then I heard back, and they were like, "Okay, there's an interview process. You have gone through the first round of it. You now need to come in for your interview." And I'm like, "Huh? What?"
They need to see you.
Yeah, I was like, "All right, I can talk to anybody. Okay, when, where?" They're like, "Well, interviews are only being held on this date at this time. We would love to see you.
Ugh.
Let us know when you're going to be available." And I'm like, "Okay, that's a 2 hour drive. Not only is it a 2 hour drive from where I live, but it's a different time zone. Um,
Ooh.
I'm, got to be cognizant of the time difference because I can't be the black applicant who's an hour late.
You
Like that just
cannot.
can't happen." So I, emailed them back, "Hey, I would love to come. What do you have available?" It happened to be like I think a 10:30 time slot. Thank God it was on a Saturday. I'm like, okay, boom, bam, I'll make it work.
Yeah.
Laid out my clothes a week in advance. I was like, does this look scholarly enough? Like, is this professional enough? Like,
Wow.
okay, now how do I do my hair? Do I wear my natural hair? Do I straighten it? Do I
Mm.
pull it in a ponytail? Do I put it up in a bun because I'm black? But I don't want to give the impression that I'm black and now unfit to be in your academic space. And that's another thing that black women have to fight with all the time. Like,
Yeah.
do I wear my hair in a twist out? Do I wear my bantu knots? Can I go get dreads before I go to this interview? Or are you going to tell me I'm unfit, not because of my academic ability, but because you don't like how I look? So went through all of that. And then I go up to Louisville for the interview, and they drilled me. They asked me questions about my Claflin experience, about my Auburn experience. What do you know about educational theories? What do you know about, putting educational theories into praxis? What do you know about teaching students with diverse abilities? What do you know about exceptionalities? And I'm just like, what? This is like a job interview.
Yeah.
I understand why they needed to know that because, again, the pressures of a PhD program, it's heavy. And
I've
if you're
heard.
not really in it for the right reasons, why am I accepting you to take somebody else's spot and you're going to be gone next week or next month?
Yeah.
So
True. True.
they drilled me. And at the end, they said, you are the only person who's really invested in joining this program to be a teacher.
Wow.
Everyone is interested in joining to become an administrator, to become a principal, to become a provost. You're really the only person who's consistently said, I want to become the best teacher I can be. And they said, we're not quite sure how you'll fit in with the other people because they all want to be administrators and presidents and provosts and principals, but we'd love to have you. And I was like, thank you. So another opportunity, I'm thanking them and shaking their hands. I went outside and, I'm praying and thanking God, and I get in my car and I drive back to Indiana, and it's like, okay, phase 3. It's like, leveling up on the game. It's like, now you've defeated that monster.
Yeah.
Let's defeat this one. Have tools to go on to round 3, and it's like, here we go. So, I don't have anybody in my immediate family who has a PhD. I don't have anyone in my immediate family who has gone for a PhD. So how do I now find the tools that I need to be successful in this new round?
Starting over again.
Again, in a completely different space because now I'm going to school in Kentucky.
Ooh wee. Yeah.
uh,
You.
at a private Catholic school. And, she wears a cross around her neck. So they know I'm not Catholic.
Yeah.
It was interesting, but I learned so much about myself, and I got to take classes, for instance, on how poverty affects students' learning, on institutional budgeting, on things like student success models. Those are the things that I really take from my doctorate program that I thoroughly enjoyed. Like, we had some great discussions. I read so much. I'm a reader anyway, but got to read some cool stuff. And you look up and 3 years later, it's like you're done with classes. You ready to start this dissertation? And it's like, am I?
Ooh.
I've never written a dissertation. Am I ready to start this dissertation? So again, I reverted back to first gen, and what first gens do. You got to find an ally. You got to read some books. You got to figure out what the expectations are and then try to meet those expectations. So my dissertation is on the impact of mentorship and advising on first generation students, which really is, like a story of my life type of thing.
Right.
But it's important to me because I want to see if other students are having the same experiences that I had, now 6 years ago, 10 years ago, right? Whether those things are continuing. Or, is there a statistical significance between the impact of a mentor on a first generation college student's life? Is there a statistical significance in the impact of a good advisor on a first gen college student's life? And I'm excited to see what the findings show me. I'm excited to write it up. I'm excited to publish this dissertation and then be able to move into, some articles that discuss what it's like being a first gen student in today's world, especially with all of the civil unrest, racial tensions and things like that we're still going through today.
Yeah. Again, I got to catch my breath. Hold up. Your story is so amazing. I couldn't imagine having to go through some of those things. Just being in these new environments, no experience, no one to really call on, no one to really rely on. You make it through, or you're about to make it through, and now I'm practicing all these things that I've learned, and I got this little pissant sitting across from me, looking at the color of my skin and thinking, just because you haven't heard of my school and because of the way I look, you think you're better than me, even though I'm the one standing in the front of this class and my name is on the door.
I was good enough to get into this school. I was good enough to be offered a full ride for a master's and a PhD, but I'm not good enough to be a professor. Oh yeah, for sure.
Wow. And
Of
then
course, that's what they think.
and then to once again further your journey into education again and pursue even more because you knew what you wanted to do. You knew what you wanted to do and you stuck with it. And for real, you know what you want to do when people sitting across from you regurgitate that and say, wow, you kept saying. So that's very big. And wow, you're awesome for that.
It's been interesting, so much so that once I started my doctoral program, I would have like different teachers and principals reach out to me and say, hey, do you want to consult? Like, do you want to come and share with us what we're not doing right in terms of how we're interacting with our students of color, how we're interacting with students with disabilities? Can you come and consult with us about how we're interacting with our LGBTQIA students? Can you come and consult and tell us what we're not doing right with students who come from poverty situations? And I'm always like, I would love to. I would love to come and share what I've learned, because it goes back to what you said at the beginning. People who amass anything, who have the right character, will be willing to share what they've amassed with you to help you get there. It's not about me hoarding it. Like, what can I do with my education and my experiences if I just keep it for Xavia? It's about sharing it. So, and I shared this because it's funny to me. Just a few days ago, someone from a community organization here asked me, would you be willing to consult with us on issues of diversity? We want to know about race. We want to know about disability. We want to know about LGBTQIA. We need to know about poverty and how it influences people and trauma. And I'm like, wow, you're hitting on all of my wheelhouses. Yeah, I'd be happy to. And she says to me, so, what's your honorarium? What do you charge? And I was like, I don't charge people to share what I know. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not charging you to share what I know about how you should be treating people, about how you should be intentional and equitable in the ways that you associate with people. I'm not charging you for that. Now, if I am consulting in Kentucky or in South Carolina or in Florida, do they fly me out and pay for my flight? Yes. But if I'm coming down the street, like, girl, I'm gonna just hop in the truck. I will meet you around the corner. What time do you want me to be there? I'd be happy to share. But that's always the assumption. You're amassing this knowledge, you're amassing these experiences because you just want to hoard them and keep them from yourself. But are you going to give back? Are you going to share with other people what you learned? It's like, I've been sharing what I've learned my entire life, and no, I'm not going to charge you to share what I learned, or what I know. But you have to be willing to say, yes, like you said, somebody's experiences and educations just happen to be more than mine, and if she's willing to share with me what she knows, I have to now be willing to listen.
You're very noble, because I would have charged.
Give me the loot.
You asked, you know what I'm saying? No, that's very noble of you. I agree. I've definitely been asked to do a couple things and help out with a couple things, and I share that mentality, because it's like, why did I learn all this if I'm not going to use it for the greater good? Like, I shouldn't have to charge everybody for every single thing. Yeah, we know there's things that you should monetize about yourself, but you don't have to be a walking dollar sign. So, exactly. And that goes a long way, because you never know who you gonna need. Hey, let me get this letter, or hey, I got a cousin that's coming down your way. Like, that can go a long, long, long way.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm not gonna keep you much longer. I only have a couple more questions. Everything you've been saying is just wow. I can't wait to listen back to this one in editing. You have no idea. I'm so inspired. I'm not working hard enough. All right. So you've talked a lot about your parents, and one of the questions I asked you about are your greatest influences, and you spoke about them. But do you have a particular time or a particular story about your parents that truly helped give you that extra push?
So many. So again, just growing up in a household with, older Black parents. My mother was 45 years old when I was born. So I didn't get that, riding to school, listening to Ice Cube experience. I got the riding to school, listening to Al Green, riding to school, listening to James Brown, riding to school, listening to Patti LaBelle, riding to school, listening to Kenny G. I got that experience. So my parents always talked to me like I was a mature adult. Their expectations for me were to always be mature, right? Even at 6, 7, 8, like, you know better than that. You know better. And it's like, I do. I do know better. You're right. That was immature. So a lot of my experiences with my parents were just like wise counsel, just always reminding me that is not what you should be doing. That's not what you should be doing. So one of my experiences, I have so many I can recall, with education, I'll say, came from an experience in high school. Now, again, I had just come from a preparatory laboratory school, K through 8, that was predominantly Black. Our teachers were nationally certified, had won teaching awards. We had professors from South Carolina State and Claflin teaching us, like, just Black excellence, so to speak. Okay. We did have non-Black students there, but I would have maybe 1 or 2 non-Black students in my classroom. So we were never taught to think we were inferior. Going to a public high school on the rural side of Orangeburg, that was completely flipped. I had to fight to be seen. I had to fight to get help, right? I had to fight to ask questions, to sit in the front of the classroom. It was, it was different, because now all of these people know each other and they've all gone to school together for years. I'm like, who are you, right? Mm-hmm. So one of my experiences after going to that high school was with my math teacher. And I'll never forget. I'm not going to cry. I'll never forget. I'd studied my butt off for this test because I wanted to make, a good impression. It's one of our first tests. Mm-hmm. And I, again, was sitting in the front of the classroom, but I've never been math-minded. I'm language arts for sure. I studied my tail off. I had been sitting at the dining room table night after night after night, quizzing myself, flashcards, repeating equations to myself, like really forcing myself to learn it. To the point that my dad would come around, like, come on, baby, it's time to go to bed. Like, come on, go to bed. You gonna do fine. I'm like, all right, brush my teeth, take my shower, get to bed. So the morning comes, I'm all excited, I'm ready. I'm looking at my flashcards. I take my test and I'm nervous. I'm the last student out the room. I said, okay, Miss So-and-so, I'm gonna give her name away in
Mhm.
case she's still living. And I said, you have a nice day. And she's like, you know,
Oh,
mm-hmm. I go on to the next class, and maybe an hour later, she comes and gets me from class. And I step out into the hallway, and I'm like, yes, ma'am. You know what? Yes, ma'am. Did I do something wrong? Did I leave something in your classroom? Because again, Xavia, that's my thought. I must have left something in your classroom. She's like, yeah, graded the test from this morning, and it's obvious that you cheated.
Come.
So during lunch, you're going to come back to my classroom and you're going to retake this. And I'm going to sit across from you and I'm going to watch you take it because it's obvious you cheated. So
What?
my first reaction was, this is a joke. Like, you don't really think I cheated because you know how hard I work. But then my second reaction was, there's no way you know how hard I work. You don't know anything about me. You haven't taken the time to get to know me. You haven't taken the time to ask me about myself or about my family life. You don't know that my parents, make me do my homework before I go to bed. You don't know that I have a two-parent household. You don't know that my mom and my dad didn't go to college, so that they really pushed me to get my work done before bed. You don't know that. Your assumption is what you've seen on TV, what you
Yep.
and your friends joke about, what
Yep.
you joke about at the church, what you joke about, at the barbershop and the beauty salons. What you know about me is not anything that you've actually taken the time as my teacher to get to know about me. So how would you know that I didn't cheat? How would you know that I'm actually just a good student and I really worked hard? So I asked her in between tears, well, why do you think I cheated? I studied. I said, I can show you my flashcards. And I don't know why I did that. She used the flashcards as
Oh, that's what you were looking at.
yes, this is now the evidence that you were cheating. And I said, no, these are my flashcards. Look, here are my notes from class. And I'm crying profusely and I'm pulling stuff out my book bag. And look, I got it. I didn't cheat. And she says, no. She said, you're going to come back to my classroom during lunch and you're going to retake this test. And if you don't retake it, I'm going to write you up and send you to the principal and you'll definitely be expelled. Just like that.
What?
She turned away and walked away from me. No conversation, no, well, maybe you didn't, honey, but let's just take it to make sure. It was one of those situations where I was proven guilty. It wasn't an assumption of innocence. I literally probably was 15, maybe 14, if I'm being honest. So I, go to the bathroom. I'm crying profusely. I don't know why she's treating me this way. Again, I'm, one of the only black kids in the class, but I didn't immediately associate it with race
Right.
or with bigotry or prejudice. I really was like, why? I'm having a good day. I studied so hard for this. I thought I did well. Why is she treating me like that? Go back to my other classroom. My teachers asked me what's wrong. I refuse to say it. My classmates asked me what's wrong. I refuse to say it. Lunchtime comes. I knock on her door. And she's like, you can come in. Treated me like a criminal the entire time. Put your bag by the door. Put your books by the door. You come over here and sit down. She sits in
What?
front of me. She's drinking, her Coke or whatever she was drinking. And she's watching me literally everything I wrote on the paper. She's like a hawk. And I'm taking my test and I feel pressured because
Yeah.
you're
It's
breathing down my neck.
yeah. It's not the same. It's not the same. It's not the
And
same as it was the first time. It's not fair.
right.
I'm
And
really pissed off right
I
now. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I immediately understood the stakes. Like, Xavia, if you score 5 or 10 points less, she is going to say that you definitely cheated.
Right.
So you're going to have to score the same thing, or she is going to think that you definitely cheated. You definitely had help, little black girl, to make that score. So I'm sitting there, and as soon as it hit me that, okay, I'm going to have to score the same thing, because if I make anything lower, she's going to swear she's still going to report me. She's still going to think it's evidence of me cheating. I begin to cry. So I'm crying. I'm finishing up my test. I'm crying. I'm finishing up my test. I'm not speaking to her. I'm crying, finishing up. And she's just sitting there, just hawking, never asking, are you okay? Do you want a tissue? Nothing. I take the test, and I kind of sit straight up, and I took a deep breath, and I said, I'm done. And she said, well, thank you. Just like that. Took my test, back to her desk. I grabbed my things, crying profusely. My day was ruined at that point.
Right.
The next time I saw her, I was very respectful. But I went up to her after class and I said, Miss So and so, did you have a chance to grade my quiz? I never heard from you that day. What did you think? She says, oh, I guess it was just luck because you scored 4 points higher than you did the first time. I'll never forget. And I just looked at her and I said, oh, okay. And she said, next time you take your test, you'll be taking them in front of me. So just be prepared for that. And she walked off. No explanation. No, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have ever accused you. Nothing. And every time after that, I don't know if my classmates know this or not. I'm not gonna cry. Every test after that I took in class with my classmates during lunchtime at the beginning of lunch, I would have to go and retake it in her classroom.
You'd have to take every test twice?
Yep.
Okay. You're a professional.
For the rest of that school year, the entire time that I was in her class, I would take whatever day that test was, I would have to take it with my classmates because I can't be blatantly racist. I would have to take it with my classmates. She would come to me right before lunch and say, yeah, I need you to retake this. You made an 88. Yeah, I need you to retake this. You made a 93. Yeah, I'd like for you to retake this. You made a 90. And every time, I'm going to tell you how funny God is. Every time I retook those tests, I always scored the same or higher. Never once did I score lower. And that has nothing to do with intelligence. That has everything to do with God.
You're a professional, so you can't say it, but I'm going to say it. Whoever this lady is, I hope you're listening. You're a fucking asshole.
My classmates probably, they have to remember that because every lunch, at the very beginning of lunch, I would be absent and I would kind of walk in like 10 minutes late, 15 minutes late. Like there were sometimes I didn't even get to eat lunch because she would have me in her classroom taking this hard math test.
She is a disgrace to education. God is real. I say that because you're the second person, fellow Claflinite, that has told me about an experience where a teacher was just discouraging a student. And it's like, if you're in education and you're listening to this, understand something. I don't think you ever dream bigger in your life than when you're a kid. When you're a kid, before all of these variables and a true understanding of what it is to be an adult and paying bills and all that comes in, you think literally anything is possible. Anything. So when someone who's older than you and wiser than you, who's teaching you, stands in front of you and presents themselves as a roadblock, that is a killer. You can literally change the trajectory of that child's entire life with those actions. And either they're going to rise above, which is rare because you're so hurt, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of that will depend on your home life. Like, thank God my dad was the type, hey, what's going on? My dad was a talker. He made me talk about everything. So I was very communicative. Is that a word? Don't answer that. Okay. Oh. But that just pisses me off so bad because I've had so many situations where with my kids, and I just love my kids. And I remember that you are a kid. And if they did cheat, I'm going to say, well, why'd you cheat? What happened, man? You didn't study? All right, look, I'm going to give you a couple days. Go study. You know what I'm saying? Just don't make it a habit.
Test.
Yeah, because we all cheated sometimes.
That's being a teacher. That's being a teacher. That's being in education for the right reason, to educate me. Being in education and literally, as you said, presenting yourself as a roadblock. I am now the guard in the tower. And I'm going to keep you from passing this class because I know if you pass this class, you get to go on to the next class. So if I go out of my way to accuse you, to put this emotional trauma and strain in your life and associate that with coming to class, can you imagine how nervous I would be going into that class every day?
Yeah.
Can you imagine, like, she's asking, well, who knows the answer to this? I got the answer, but I'm not speaking up.
Like, I know what you think of me.
Never. And I would dread going to that class. And I have classmates to this day who, if they really thought about it, they would be like, you know what? She's right. That lady did treat her wrong in class. That lady did talk to her crazy. That lady did. She was never in lunch the first 15, 20 minutes. That's crazy. If they thought about it, they could pinpoint who it was and what was going on. But again, I was in a new school. I didn't know these administrators. I didn't know these teachers. I'm a new student. And this woman decided that she was going to be the bully in my story. She was going to be the antagonist in my story. And she tried hard. I don't know if it's something that I said. I don't know if it's just, the fact that I was a dark-skinned Black girl from, a rural city. And she decided, well, you ain't going to be nothing, so I'm going to help you out. But she did everything in her power, like literally stood in the hallway and told me, I know you cheated. So from here on out, you'll be coming and retaking these tests. And if you don't retake them, I'll write you up for all the ones that you cheated on. And then you'll get expelled. And walked away like, it's just another one who will get expelled. So what? So that's the story that for me resonates so much when I think about my parents, because I remember going to my dad in tears that same day, the first time I had to retake the test, and saying to him, Daddy, I don't know what I did to this lady. I don't know why she's singling me out. I don't know why she thinks I cheated. But for some reason, she doesn't think that I'm capable of making the grade that I made. And he said to me, I'll never forget, he said, not only will you retake the test, but God's going to make it so, again, this is a man with limited education. God going to make it so that you surprise her. He said, so you retook it? I said, yeah, I retook it. He said, okay. He said, and you didn't give her no trouble. I said, no, I didn't give her no trouble. Okay. So what you going to do is you find out what the score was, and you going to retake it and keep retaking them. And God going to make it so. God going to make it so that you surprise her and you surprise all of them. And that is what rings in my head when I'm fighting with dissertation, when I'm fighting, with PhD stuff, when I was fighting with master stuff, when I was fighting at Claflin. God going to make it so. God going to make it so. God going to make it so. You going to surprise them? God going to make it so. So that's what I always think back to. God is going to make it so. You feel like this is insurmountable. You feel like this is a burden. Like, I was crushed, but God gonna make it so. Don't dwell on this. So that's one of the things that, again, my dad didn't have the education to be able to help me study for the test, but he had the faith to be able to give his little girl what she needed in that moment to not feel so defeated with having to go in and retake tests every week.
I'm gonna go punch something after this interview. Okay.
No, not at all. It was good motivation. Terrible story. Terrible. I cried about that thing. That thing hurt my heart, because I think that's when I first realized that teachers could be so prejudiced.
Yeah.
Because again, before that, I had never had that experience. So when I realized that she was using her position as a teacher to institutionalize her racism, I said, well, what can you do? What could I do? You're the only one to teach this class.
Yeah.
I have to go through you. It's a small school. I can't go to someone else. I have to go through you to get to where I want to be. So that's the story I think of. And of course, she continued to be nasty towards me the rest of the year. Yeah. The next year, I moved on to a new class and a new class and a new class. And my senior year, I had the option to take AP Math. It was crazy. It's just crazy how God works. And when I got ready to graduate, to go to Claflin, I got a scholarship for English, for students who wanted to be English educators. And I was the only senior who wanted to be an English educator. And they gave me this big old scholarship. And I just remember looking down at her. I just remember walking up on the stage, getting that big scholarship to go to school for English education. I'm the only senior who wants to be an English teacher. Like, how appropriate. And you're just sitting there looking like, damn it, I ain't do a good enough job keeping her from graduation. Like,
I won.
And it was just so appropriate in that moment. But she's honestly the reason why I didn't go back to my high school for years after that, because I associated that place with a lot of trauma. Even though my other teachers were great, I had great teachers like Miss Threed and again Dr. Smith. Miss Smith was fantastic. Our superintendent at the time was fantastic. Dr. Jenkins, a Black woman, but I never shared with them what she was doing. I didn't want to be the Black girl who was pulling the race card. That's what they say when they're not an ally and they don't understand how
Yeah.
racism impacts people of color. They say, "Oh, you playing the race card." I didn't want to share that, so I just kept it to myself and I did what my daddy told me and I took the test.
Wow. You're okay. You have to write a book. You have to. You don't have to do it right now. You got
Definitely
time.
not. Yeah.
You
Maybe
got
next
time.
year,
Your story
2021.
your story has to be told. I'm glad you joined me to give us a synopsis. So those of you listening, again, y'all know why I do this. I do this so that people can share their life experiences with you so that you can receive the motivation that you need to achieve whatever it is that you're trying to achieve in life. So with that, I'm going to ask my final question that I ask all my guests.
Drum roll.
So for our listeners, especially those who are first gen like you, they might be in middle school listening to this. They might be at high school listening to this. They may be in college. They may be in grad school. They may be working on their PhD. You've already given tons and tons and tons and tons of words of wisdom. But I'm gonna ask you to give just put some icing on top of that cake for them.
Okay. Um, I would say to anyone listening who may be the first in their families to accomplish any big thing, like maybe, as you said, I'm the first person in my family to make it to this step, or maybe you're the first person in your family to accomplish this professional goal or to want to accomplish this professional goal, right? You're the first at something. I would say my words of wisdom would be the best first you can be. Because you have to remember that once you bypass this hurdle, there will be your children, other people's children, your nieces, your nephews, your godchildren, your students, kids in the community, neighbors in the community who will then come to you for your advice, your expertise, what happened to you. So be the best first you can be. And by that, I mean be in the moment. Pay attention to what's going on. Pay attention to all the people who helped you. Pay attention to all the pitfalls along the way so that you can then help someone else to bypass those things, right? Being the best first you can be, being a good first is not, yeah, I made it. Okay, well, I need help. I don't know what you're going to do. You better struggle like I struggled. That's not being a good first. Being a good first is I paid attention to the pitfalls. I paid attention to the hurdles. I jumped. I maneuvered. I made it through. Now, let me tell you exactly what to do in this maze to make it out safely. That's being a good first. So now someone else can be the second, so that someone else can be the third, so that someone else can be the fourth. If we're trying to build a community where, one day we can look up and say there are no more firsts. We have 2 doctors in this family now. We have 2 lawyers in this family. We got 2 realtors in this family. We got 2 teachers in this family. To be able to look up and say, we got 2 entrepreneurs in our family now. In our community, we have 12 professors. We have 12 superintendents.
Right.
To get to that point, we have to stop being selfish, and we have to be good first at whatever we're doing. So again, whether you're being the first person in your family to go to college, or the first person in your family to go get a master's degree, a EDD, or a PhD. If you're the first person in your family to go get a medical degree or a Juris Doctor, listen, be a great first. Remember the pitfalls, remember who helped, remember how it felt, and then once you get to the finish line, don't forget to help the person who wants to be second, and then help the person who wants to be third, and then help the person who wants to be fourth, because only in doing that sort of reciprocal help can we get our community to a place where eventually no one will have to walk that journey, that very lonely journey of being the first. They will be the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, and they'll be able to call on you, and you'll, be an old woman or man, in your rocking chair. I don't know why I have that image of rocking chairs, telling them, I remember when, I was a first gen. Ooh, let me tell you what I did. But guess what? You'll be able to share it, and it'll be worth it. It will be impactful to the community, and most importantly, it'll be significant to that person that you cared enough to share a little piece of your journey.
Wow. Um, I'm gonna add a little bit to this, and this is for the people that I addressed at the very beginning, who down education. The educational system will always be there, and we can't change it unless we're a part of it. We got to go through it. We got to see it. We have to experience it, and we have to use that same education to make the change and be the example of change that we want to see. It's necessary. Yeah, school's not for everybody, whatever, but stop downing and trashing school, y'all. Sorry, I had to add that. I'm passionate about that.
No, yeah, I agree. It's hard. It's hard to tell young people, hey, if you don't want to go to college, go find a trade. Benefit your community in that way because they see social media. They see the lures of quick money, fast money
Yep.
over the promise of an education, the promise of being a welder, right? The promise
Yeah.
of being a factory worker. Why would I want to do that when I can go make this quick money? But that reciprocal nature of giving back to your community and helping somebody else accomplish their dreams because you did, I can't compare that feeling. I can't explain to you what it feels like to watch another little black girl, white girl, brown girl accomplish her goals because I poured a little bit of something into her. um
Mm.
that's something I can't ever share with people what that feels like. So that's why whatever free time I do have, and it is limited, I try to give it back to kids. I give it back to mentoring kids. We established a youth organization here 2 years ago. It's like a Saturday academy. It's called the DNA Lab. And what we do is we teach kids about Black culture, about self-esteem, about self-care, topics like colorism, topics like, why we are so fascinated with jewelry and gold from Africa to today. We talk about things like, call and response, and why that's so much a part of the African American journey. Um, we do a lot of teaching and preaching to them to love themselves and to not get so caught up in the prejudice that they see in the world because we know it's necessary. But I give a lot of my time to that because, again, it's all about giving to somebody else. It's all about helping somebody else.
Queen, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for holding me.
It's funny. She said before I started recording, she said if we would have did this when I was originally trying to do it, it just wouldn't have been the same. And you're right. A lot happened in that was relatively short amount of time. A lot has.
Yeah, I literally had just left Alabama. I just left Auburn. So all of these new things that I can talk to you about would have just been silence.
Well, thank you once again for joining us. We
Thank you.
definitely appreciate you. I know that your words have definitely inspired me. Prayerfully, they have inspired one of our listeners. And I want to shout out the listeners once again. Thank you all for listening. Y'all already know where you can find us from My Experience Podcast on Facebook, FME_podcast on Instagram. If you have any questions, if you want to ask any follow-up questions to guests, if you have a recommended guest, you can hit us up, fmepodcast1@gmail.com. Yeah, this was amazing.
Thank you. I'm happy it went well.
I had
happy.
no
I hope
doubt.
it was fruitful.
It definitely was. So, all right, y'all. We'll catch y'all next time.